Hi there, I'm Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez, and this is the Design Your Physician Life podcast. Welcome to this episode brought to you by our maxAllure Mastermind, an exclusive mastermind for physician entrepreneurs. Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Tim Deer. He is the creator of the Spine and Nerve Centers of the Virginias, and he's also the Executive Board President Emeritus, founder and chairman of the American Society of Pain and Neuroscience. We have a great conversation with Dr. Deer about designing his physician life, being an athlete, building teams, and helping communities. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Design Your Physician Life podcast, where you will get excited about being a physician, learn the tools that can help boost your success, and great tips from successful doctors. Join us to unlock the keys to an amazing physician life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez.
So welcome to this edition of our Design Your Physician Life podcast. Thanks to Dr. Tim Deer to be here today. We're very excited to have you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a great honor to be with you, and I look forward to our conversation.
Well, Dr. Deer is actually a very well-known and respected physician in our interventional pain physician and just pain physician medicine world, not only here in the United States where we're recording, but also all over the world. And he actually helps us learn a lot about pain management. And he has done a lot for advancing our field of pain management. And we're very grateful for his work. Before we get into all the details of that, I really want to start with the beginnings, right? Let's talk to that guy, the child or whoever, the young man who decided to become a physician. How did that happen? What was going through their head?
Well, I'm from a long line of tough people. My great-grandparents were involved in something called the Buffalo Creek Flood. They lost their home when they were 90 years old and survived that. They were coal miners. My grandpas were coal miners. My dad was a coal miner. And I grew up in a town that was great, small town, a lot of sports, great community. And I really realized very early in my life, I didn't want to be a coal miner. Respected them, but I wanted to do more scientific things in my mind. So when I was about 6 years old, I decided I want to be either a professional football player or a doctor. But I wasn't that talented in football, so here I am.
So how did you test that you were not that talented in football? What happened there?
Well, I was pretty talented in high school. I was in college. I had a scholarship offer from West Virginia. And then about a month before I was going to go, Coach Nealon gave that away to a transfer and asked me to walk on. But I was quite poor, couldn't walk on. And at that point, I decided to go to a small WVU Tech, which is the engineering school, which is NAIA. And I had a pretty good couple of years there, but, this wasn't to the level I needed to be. So, I was pretty good in the classroom, and I thought my chance of success was going to be much better. I got derailed briefly as I thought about going into law school. Now that two of my daughters are actually either completed law school or going to law school, and thought about politics very briefly, but then went back on the medical track and went to medical school at West Virginia and then trained at University of Virginia.
So where did you find that inspiration to become a physician? Was it like earlier than college? Because, you have all these other thoughts in your mind. When did you say, oh, you know what? I want to be that. And yes, I'm going to do it.
No, that was in childhood. I had all my role models were coal miners except for one. And I have an uncle, Jim Cottrell, who's one of the founding fathers of neuroanesthesia. He lived in New York City. He was an anesthesiologist. And, I thought that was pretty cool. And so I went that pathway to medical school. And that was probably my inspiration. I had a local family doctor, Dr. Bach, who died of lung cancer. He was a smoker as a doctor back in the 60s. Which not surprising. Doctors really didn't know much better back then. And but he also was the other influence because I'd go to his office. I was just amazed how amazing he was to, examining me and figuring out what was wrong and treating me. And so it was my uncle, Jim Cottrell, and Dr. Bach.
Did you get, since you had so many coal miners in your family and you're talking about lungs and all this stuff, did you get to see a lot of that disease, close to you?
I saw trauma, a lot of trauma. We were in a small town, and when someone got crushed in the mines, one of my grandfathers broke his back in the mines. I saw that. My grandpa Kincaid on my mother's side had silicosis. He was a strip miner. The rest of them were deep miners. Silicosis is worse than pneumoconiosis. So I got to see that firsthand. And, the other thing the mines really did for you is to get hard work, great people, it beats your body up. So I saw a lot of people became pain patients back in those days before opioids were popular and things like that. But most of them just suffered. They didn't really have much option for treatment. And they became disabled in their early 50s usually. And their life was kind of very affected by that. So I did see all those things going on in my local town. And I think they impacted my future.
So we were talking at some point at overcoming suffering. Is this where some of those experiences started?
Well, so I saw a lot of things as a kid that I think began my suffering experience. One of them was, my dad was not very empathetic. And when I played sports, I was fairly crazy in sports. I would never take the easy way out. If I was returning kicks, I wouldn't fair catch. If I was going across the middle for a catch, I would take it no matter what. So I was always doing crazy things. My dad was one of these people that said, rub some dirt on it, boy. He wasn't very sympathetic to me with my injuries. So I think that was I have to give him a little credit for some of my endurance sports. And then my mother was pretty caring. My mother, thank God, is still around, but she also was pretty much willing to let me go ahead and continue despite any injury I had without any untoward maternal instincts to make me quit sports and things of that nature. So yeah, I think I was taught by my parents you had to toughen up and suck it up and quit being kind of an injured person a lot of times.
Let's talk a little bit more about sports before we get into medicine, because here we have somebody who has been quite a few times, participating in something called what? Ironman or something like that?
So yeah, my evolution to Ironman's been interesting. I started off, in med school and residency and fellowship, playing a lot of pickup basketball and doing a lot of racquetball and things of that nature. Never ran more than 2 or 3 miles ever. And out of med school, I became a half marathon runner. And at one point, won a few championships for what's called Clydesdale, 210 and over. I weighed about 210. I was lifting a lot of weights in my 30s, and then went to marathon. And I just ran my 17th Boston Marathon last Monday. And from marathon, I went to triathlon, and I've had the chance to go to the World Championship now 6 times. I'll be going to Utah for the World Championship here in 2 weeks. It'll be my 7th, and Tacoma in October, even my 8th. So that'll be my 29th full distance Ironman, I think, in Kona. And then that led me to ultra running, which is a whole new chapter in my life. So I keep evolving from one sport to another, and gets a little bit longer, a little bit harder with age. I'm not sure that's the way it's supposed to go, but it's worked out pretty well for me so far.
That's amazing, because we have somebody who, didn't do that well on football, let's say.
Well, that's not quite true. I did pretty well, just not to the NFL level.
But not like a career, like, you chose medicine, right? And then after you've been a physician, you actually developed an athletic career, pretty cool. At the same time that you're not only a physician, a father, a family man, all these businesses, all this education that you're doing for everybody. So trying to find that balance and that time and, prioritizing things in your life has to be very important, right?
Well, I think there's been 2 things that's helped me do what I've done. Well, really many things, but 2 for sure. One is that God's blessed me with good health. And, as I did that 17th Ironman or 17th Boston, the 28th Ironman or whatever it was recently. And when I won the Masters World Championship in ultra running in Badwater in 2021, got 11th overall. Good health has been a blessing because not everyone has the health to do that. 2, as my wife has been very much a blessing to allow me to do all those things. But thirdly, I've been really good at time management. So many days I'll get up at 4 a.m. I'll be working out at 4:30. About 7:30, I get to the office, do my surgeries and my work all day. Another workout about 4:30 or 5, back home by 6. So it's a time management skill that I've been blessed with that's allowed me to do a lot of things. And I think that people who aren't good at that, that's one of the things you can do in life to really make your life more full, is to get really good at managing your time so that you don't waste a moment and you live every moment, because wasted time is bad for you. It's bad for those around you. It's really bad for your success and your prosperity and your ability to do things.
And you talk about your wife and thinking about this everything is teams, right? Like you, not only for your time management, you have to take into consideration your own dedication, your own priorities, but also creating good teams. So you've been able to create good teams at home, good teams at work, good teams in your education and sports. Is that correct?
Well, I've been blessed in all those areas. At home, I've got my wife, Melissa, who's been a great partner. I've got 4 children who, 2 now, one's through law school, one's in law school, one's a oncology chemotherapy nurse for children in Charlotte. And my son is a heart failure rep in Augusta, Georgia. So they've been really supportive. We've been great together. At work, a great team. Chris Kim, my partner for many years. Our other physician teams, Ashley Comer, my nurse practitioner, works with me closely. And, Michelle Miller, my assistant, every single part of that. Jessica Pauly, my medical assistant for many years. We've been a team, and that makes me more efficient. And then sports-wise, so many training partners, so many people pacing me, so many people in my crew. Badwater, for example, I had Ian Custer and his daughter Aubrey, who's a WVU athlete, as my pacers. I had Keith Betters, my crew chief, an old friend of mine, Jason Ofinger, who did analytics, looking at fluid consumption. When you're trying to beat people over 135 miles in a desert, when you're running, if you don't have a team, let me tell you, I don't care how good you are at a sport, you won't do well. So that's been really critical. You're so right. In every aspect of my life, I've had teams. And then overall, I think my walk with God's always with me. So I think that's been the other part of my team there. And then in medicine, my local people, but also nationally, my relationships with people like Dawood Sayed, Jason Pope, Robert Levy, all those things have been so helpful to me. Recently Erica Peterson and been really involved with ASPN. And so I've been really so pleased with all my friends. And I could name 100 more people in the medicine journey who's helped me.
That's awesome. So let's now move into your medicine journey, right? So you went through medical school, and at some point you decided to become a pain doctor. How did that happen?
So it's really interesting. It's interesting to me. It may not be to your listeners. I hope it is. When I was in med school, I was torn between neurosurgery and cardiology, and I couldn't make up my mind. And it may surprise some, but I was a pretty intense medical student. I was first in my class. If I made less than 100, I had a heart attack. And so I did 2 neurosurgery rotations in my 4th year, and I applied for neurosurgery residency. And then I did a rotation with a guy named Stafford Warren and Bill Carter, those 2 doctors, one from UVA, one from Duke. And they were doing something really wild called a cardiac stent. And it was like a revolutionary. And the heart surgeons hated their guts. And they said, you shouldn't be doing this. You can't treat your own complications because you're putting the stent in. If they need a bypass, you can't do it. I mean, it sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
Samir, so the other day I saw in this magazine something like, the surgeon saying, pain doctors shouldn't be doing all these procedures that we're doing right now. And it's basically like those guys did with cardiology, we're doing to spine surgery. And it's just the same story again.
Oh my God. So, there was 30 heart surgeries a day at CMC, where I was in med school, WVU at Charleston campus. And they were on these stents, and they got all kind of political trouble. They tried to take their privileges away. And I decided I was going to do cardiology instead because it was going to be the next best thing. So I switched my residency applications over to medicine and went to University of Virginia, my first choice, where I loved UVA, a great place. And I realized as soon as I got there, I'm not an internal medicine person. In fact, I hate internal medicine. I mean, thank God there's people that do it, but what's my sodium? I really don't care unless you're having an arrhythmia. I could care less what the sodium is. So I went back to the chairman of neurosurgery and said, Dr. Jane, I made a big mistake. I'd like to get a spot in neurosurgery. And he said, well, I'll give you one in a year, but you have to let me know 6 months from today if you really want it. Because the last time you told me you wanted a spot, you changed your mind. And then I went to the chairman of anesthesia, Dr. Epstein, because I did like ICU work, critical care. And he said, you need to let me know about tomorrow at 2:00. So I had about 12 hours, 18 hours to decide what I want to do. So I switched to anesthesia. I never heard of pain in my life. I didn't know what it was. And then John Rawlingson, who was head of regional anesthesia and pain at UVA, wonderful mentor. He had me put an epidural on a woman with lung cancer who had Mets to her ribs. And I put a tunneled epidural catheter in her, and she died really comfortably. And I said, this is really something that I could do. And then I heard of neuromodulation. And I worked my way into the only fellows course in the country. And they only had 2 spots. And somehow I got one of those. And I met several of my future mentors there who were teaching the course. And then I became really an advocate of really neuromodulation and minimally invasive spine. So that circle from cardiology to medicine and where we are now with minimally invasive spine techniques that we're offering our patients is so eerily familiar to my med school experience.
Today I did a mild procedure myself and I was like, oh my goodness, this feels so good. You have this like literally like it's so tiny, the incision, and these patients are able to walk so much, so much better after you do these amazing interventions. So it's great. I think that we're happy that you're in this field and I'm happy to be in this field as well. So let's see, you went through all the things, medical school, and you had your little dance there with the neurosurgeons and the cardiologists and all this stuff and internal medicine. And eventually you graduate. Tell me about your jobs going into, that took you into developing your clinic. How was that transition?
So it's so funny because I was on a panel recently and the first panelist told about his 5 jobs. He led him eventually to Harvard. The next panelist told about her 3 jobs. The next person told about their 7 jobs. Dr. Pope was on there. Dr. Pope was with me for a couple of years. I love Jason as a good friend and brother of mine. And so it got to me and I said, I've only had 1 job and I've had the same job my whole career, which is really true. So when I was at UVA, Dr. Rawlington told me he would step down in a few years. If I stayed, he would recommend me to take over for him. And then I had a couple of other offers in Huntsville, Alabama, which is a great town, a couple other places. But I came back home to West Virginia and there was no pain center there. And they promised me they'd build one before I got there because they had a whole year to work on that while I was on my fellowship. And turns out when I get back, there's no center there. I'm doing epidurals in the recovery room. And so I was doing anesthesia 4 days a week, pain 1, because my mentor there, my person who hired me said, there's not enough business to do pain every day. And about 3 months, I was doing pain 3 days a week, and about 4 months, 4 days a week. And after I passed my anesthesia boards, 5 days a week. And so in 1996, January 2nd, 1996, I was on an anesthesia call and there was a ruptured AAA came in. I thank God we got him through that case and he survived. And I never did anesthesia ever again. So that was my last anesthetic about 2 a.m. on January 2nd, 1996. And since then, I've been full-time pain. And so our clinic, we were in 5 different places in West Virginia. And we were in Virginia briefly, but it was just a very hard commute. But we really serve as a tertiary care center for not only West Virginia, but over into Virginia, Kentucky, Pennsylvania. We get a lot of the tertiary care, really difficult cases for things like DRG. And, we've done a lot of great research. We've done a lot of product development. We've helped innovate a lot of new methods over the years. And I think we're just getting started. I think I have another 10 or 15 good years in me, I hope. And so our goal is to continue. And I have a couple of really great young people with me right now. We're going to continue to build the field. I think we can be less invasive. I think we can be more efficient and get better outcomes even than we do now. So I'm at the center, the Spine and Nerve Center of Virginia's, and I've been there since June 23rd, 1994. And,
that's awesome.
Be there for a while longer. We'll see how it goes.
So imagine that you were graduating now with all that right? Because medicine has certainly evolved since 1994 when you first created this center, right?
Yeah, just a tad.
Just a tad. And let's talk about from a business point of view, right? You have a new person who's starting today in the current environment of medicine, and they want to go on and build the office of their dreams. Do you have any specific tips that you would give them, given what you know right now and how medicine has evolved over the last amount of years you've been doing this, for them to start their own place besides the time management and creating teams and all these things that we know?
Well, let me give you a few examples. I think I don't have to theorize. I can go to the real world and give you some examples. And I'm gonna give, if you'll bear with me for about 3 or 4 minutes, I'll give you a couple of things of my experience and what I've seen. So I've had people join me in the past, like Jason Pope and Warren Grace, Matt Ransom, who spent a few years with me, learned new techniques, new methods, and then went out and did their own thing and did it really well. So they actually got mentored by someone to learn how to create their own practice. So I think that's a great way to do it. Join a more senior person that you like and respect, and then you go out and you duplicate what they've done. And I've seen that now among 4 or 5 of my colleagues who've been with me for a while and then went out on their own. And I love that. And I love to see them do well. The other way you can do it is you can take the leap. But to do that, you have to have proper financing. You have to have the line of credit. Sashi Patel is a great example in Delaware. She visited me when she was a fellow, and she got great mentoring in her fellowship. But Sashi's gone out in Delaware and really created a great model, and she's been very successful. You look at people like Jay Shaw in New Jersey, same thing. He went out on his own surgery center, did a phenomenal job. And I remember when Jay visited me right at the end of his fellowship, we had a long discussion. So I think you either can get mentored or you can go out on that ledge. If you go on that ledge, though, you better have some support from people that you respect and who care about you, who will help you get through the tough days, because you're gonna have tough days. And then the third model is you join somebody that you don't like, you have a bad experience, which is very common in our field. Most people change jobs 3 times in the first 5 years. And then you go out on your own for spite because you want to teach the other person. That usually doesn't work out too well. So you always have, if you're going to go on your own, have a strategy, have a plan, have people around you, have proper funding, get the proper staff, do it. And then the last thing is, if you do it on your own, do it compliantly, But, recently I was talking to a good friend who visited me, Jordan Tate, down in Georgia. And she was in a group, she went out on her own, and with a colleague who went on his own. And I think that's a good example of, you also can team up with other people. It doesn't have to be you as a solo person. You can maybe join a few other folks and go on your own. I could just keep going on and on with names like Noam Nazim and Navdeep Jassal. So many people that went out on their own and did well. But I will tell you about 10 other people I've known who've gone out on their own and failed. And I'm not going to say their names, but I've seen them fail. And the reason they fail usually is the doctor has to be the leader. You have to be disciplined. You have to be efficient. You have to be compliant. You have to be, if you're not the leader, then you're going to fail. You can't depend on a business manager to lead your people. You need a business manager, you need a team, but you have to set the goal. Show up early for work hard, do a great job, take good care of patients. Create a practice that's really based on evidence, not on doing things to make people necessarily just happy, but really the best evidence for the person. So the lessons learned by the people I've met in my career are really fit into multiple buckets. And I think we could talk about it for hours. I know we don't have that much time today, but it is an interesting process. And if you're going to go on your own, I think the most important 3 things, I'll break down to 3 points: get proper funding, get the proper mentor, and then you need to really make sure you surround yourself with good people. And you can only afford a few people at a time. So the early hires you make are the most important.
Yeah, I think all those are very important points. One of the things that you mentioned, those cases when you just get upset at your employer and then you say, I'm out of here, and then you just go and build shop, but you don't plan for it. And I think that despite being upset at somebody, the way that they're working, you can also plan to take the time to learn from that experience, right? And gather yourself so that you can get your proper financing without just throwing yourself without a plan, without financing, and just dealt, being driven by, being upset or angry or something like that. Much rather being driven by providing something good to your patients and to your family and to yourself. So you take the time, even though you might be a little bit upset with somebody, to get to the right mentors and the right processes. So even though some people will move from there, that might be a better way of doing that. And all those examples that you've given, they're great physicians with great practices right now. So besides being a physician in your practice, you mentioned research and you have some other endeavors. Can you tell a little bit about other ways of enhancing or trying to leverage your degree as a physician, ways of helping the community and helping advance your field in medicine, whatever you're doing?
Well, that's such a great question, but also a very complicated question. It's so many facets there. So let's just break it into a few facets. So you said community. I mean, community-wise, I always tell people I don't spend any money on marketing, and we're the busiest practice probably within hundreds of miles. And we really, everything you do is marketing. When you go out to the community and you really participate in a food bank to help the poor, or you go to your local church or synagogue or mosque and you do things that are the right thing to do, and you go to your kid's school and you help out by supporting, whatever it may be, chorus, sports, other things. So I do think that one thing you can do to build your practice is be a good person. So I think that's probably number one. If people know you're a good person, they're going to like that. Number two, I think it's really important as you think about you talked about leveraging your degree. When you've done a lot of work, you've worked hard to do what you do. So I think when you collaborate, and I think collaboration is very important. For example, Earl Bach invented the pacemaker. He did that with a surgeon from University of Minnesota. Benabed did the first brain stimulator. He did that with Medtronic. So, I mean, you can go on and on with examples of doctors collaborating. When you collaborate, make sure you're doing something that you're really passionate about. Make sure you're doing something at fair market value, because that's the measure DOJ uses for compliance. Make sure you're doing something that's going to change the field. And make sure when you see something wrong, and this is why I think I've been a valuable collaborator with different companies, is call them out. You know, you don't ever say, yes, that's a good idea. You say, that's a horrible idea. And I think anyone who listens to this podcast who works for any company, you just got to chill right now, because I always say when someone has a terrible idea, I make sure they understand it, because we have to really be an advocate for advancement, innovation. I think that's what doctors, you and I, can do to help other companies and things of that nature, because they're the ones that have the products, right? And that's what we need. But we also have to be, first and foremost, an advocate for patient safety and efficacy. If you put that, I've told 1 million students and residents and fellows this, if you put patient safety and efficacy first, you'll make money, you'll be successful, you'll have a great career. But the moment you put either one of those below anything else, you're going to fail. And you're going to fail because I think there's karma in the world, and patient safety and advocacy has to be our first goal. And that's not always easy. So that's my number one rule for really leveraging what you do, is to always do that first. And then you have to be a nice person. And there's a lot of people out there that are successful who are real, not very nice people. You know who they are. You've met them. And they're jealous of their colleagues, or they say bad things about colleagues. They're not nice people. They will fail eventually. They will fail eventually because good wins over evil. And I think that patient safety and advocacy wins over everything else. And they aren't advocating for the right reasons. So I think that's always my option, is to advocate for the right reason. I always take that. And then the last moment about that, using your degree the right way, is surround yourself with good people, whether it be a doctor, or a nurse practitioner, or a nurse, your mother, your father, people around you. Make sure you surround yourself with people who really care about the world and the good of all. And that, to me, has been why I've been successful. I've been surrounded by so many good people my whole life, and every step of life, that it's really helped me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I've always told my fellows when I was in teaching at Oregon Health and Science University that that's the first thing. Just make sure that the patient is the center of whatever you do, and then everything else will follow. And it does. You obviously have to get ready and get prepared and study many other things that they don't teach us in medical school. But just by doing that's at the center of your profession, and then the rest will come. And people will follow you, and that's all you need. Do good job, do good work for them. So in closing here, do you have any other particular, because you have given us so many tips and so much good information, anything that we haven't covered that you say, I'm passionate about this and really need to get this out of my chest because I need to share this with the world?
Yeah, I think I have one more thing to share. And that is, I want to talk about two societies that I really played a major role in. So INS is going to be in Barcelona. If you're not signed up for that now, it's probably too late. It's a month from now. But, I think it's important to be international. And if you're centric in your country, wherever country you're in right now, listen to this podcast. If you think you're the best country in the world, you might be. And I believe the United States is the best country in the world in a lot of ways. But you're not the best country in the world for medicine, because it takes all of us internationally to advance medicine. So I will say that I'm passionate about INS, and we are going to have a division of ASPN, iASPN, that Rita Talba has actually started, and we'll be building on that starting a month from now. But I will say that ASPN was created to really make a network of people like yourself and myself who can advance the field for the right reasons. And it's meant to be diverse. It's meant to be collaborating. It's meant to be supportive of each other, meant to be lacking of professional jealousy, and really advancing the field. So we'll meet in July 14th through the 17th in South Beach, Miami at Lowe's Hotel. We've already outgrown that hotel. It's already full, but there's 3 other hotels that are participating with us, and hope you can join us there. And then I think it's really important that and this is my last point, and unless you have another question, you need to support your friends and colleagues. And just remember this: if your friend does well, it doesn't hurt you, it helps you. So I see so much jealousy out there in other professionals. And I have a lot of young people say to me, why did you choose so-and-so to work with you on a project? Why didn't you choose me? And I said, well, I'll be happy to work with you too. It's not either or, it's all. It's not either or, it's all. We have to work together. And if you have a friend doing well, go to that friend and say, how did you do well? Can you help me do well? Don't like badmouth your friend. So I do think that I'm trying to support, in my mind, a female, male, gender, race, anything you may have about you that's in any category, we should all come together. We shouldn't be different. We should be together and advocate for each other and support each other. And if we can do that, and that's why I created Aspen, but I hope in Aspen, outside of Aspen, we really start to be more of a cohesive community that roots for each other to win always and to help patients. So that's my last thought that I have, but I think that might be my most important thought, is that we need to come together.
As physicians, one of the things, let's say one of the main things that has brought me to help physicians in the ways that I'm doing right now is because we have grown historically, culturally separate, right? We're always competing for spots. We're always competing on this thing and that thing. And then when we get out, many times we're like, this is right, this is wrong. And then just having these non-productive interactions amongst us. But at the end of the day, we have to really come together. We have 300 to 400 physicians committing suicide every year. That's 3 to 4 medical classes a year. And if anything has happened in the last 2 years, that physicians have really come together, not only to call that out, to also help each other. And I think when somebody asked me this year, what's your word for the year? And I chose the word together, because together we can achieve so much more. And you know what? It doesn't matter if you have to share whatever it is. If you have to share the spot with somebody, that your name is not at the top. It doesn't matter if you get a little bit less money of that opportunity. It doesn't matter, because at the end, if you do many of those together, you're going to achieve way much more than what you achieve with just doing solo all the time. So it's really something that has to change culturally for us physicians, for us to survive really as a specialty, in our word, as their career. So that's dead on. Really, togetherness and helping each other. And if there's a moment where physicians want to help each other, it's right now. And if you have any questions, we're available right and left there to mentor each other. And don't stop to ask. Don't forget to ask. You have to ask, really. But you won't get help if you don't ask, and you won't get help if you don't play nice with others, and you don't get help if you want to always be at the top. So it's really about all of us taking care of our communities, taking care of our patients, and we can achieve so much more. So thank you very much, Dr. Diaz, for being here today and giving us, sharing with us your knowledge from so many years that you've been practicing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful night.
You too. Well, guys, that's it for today. Stay tuned for more of our Design Your Physician Life podcast, which was brought to you today by our maxAllure Mastermind, an exclusive mastermind for physician entrepreneurs. We will continue to bring you useful information to develop and design your physician life, like we did today with Dr. Tim Diaz. His clinical website is actually centerforpainrelief.com. Thank you for joining us. We hope you had a great time as we did. Stay in touch with us. Visit our website, www.maxallure.com. That is MAXALLURE. Please don't forget to subscribe, like our podcast, give us 5 stars, and share the love with your friends and family. See you later. Thanks. Bye.
Please remember that Design is not providing specific financial, medical, or career advice. Our only intent is to stimulate your appetite for growth by sharing our experience and those of our speakers, coaches, and guests. Your personal growth and success will be unique to your circumstances and your hard work. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the show and look forward to seeing you next week.